that we are hosting as your peak body for outdoors. Every activity that you can possibly think of out in the outdoors that connects our communities to nature for the better health and well-being of all of those communities. So may I say welcome, thank you for joining us, and Warumi, which is Darug language for hello and welcome. And may I pay my respects to all Aboriginal people on the lands of which we meet today, in each area that you come from and the lands from which I come from and Dave comes from, who's our keynote speaker today. But before we jump into today's presentation, just a quick reminder of who Outdoors New South Wales and ACT is. And we are a peak body, an incorporated association that delivers benefits to members, everything from advocacy through to marketing, business support, and obviously in the times that we come in 2020, a hell of a lot of information about what's going on in the world of COVID and restrictions and legislation. So that has been a big part of where we've been. We hope we won't be there for much longer, and we're going to be jumping more into supporting our businesses in marketing and promotion of the sector, and get our sector widely known for what the value is that it represents, which is $7.6 billion in New South Wales and ACT. So it's a massive, massive industry, and we need to show everyone where we sit in that value and what we represent to our communities. So saying of which, today is about marketing, and what I'm going to ask Dave to present to you today is a way to really look at your own marketing and maximise that effect. And I know you're all in the space of various avenues of marketing. What today is about is really getting the best results from that. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Dave, and please, if you jump into your Q&A, you can certainly ask any questions of Dave as we go. Don't hesitate. I'll monitor it and I'll interrupt him whenever I see it necessary. And also your chat feature. So if you want to chat amongst yourselves, you're more than welcome to do so as well. It's a little bit different to our usual Connect and Shares, which we hold on a Friday at 10 o'clock, where you can see each other. This one is a webinar, so you don't actually get to see each other, but we can certainly hear you. So if you want to ask a question yourself and not type it in, you can raise your hand in the participants panel, and I will call on you, unmute you, and you can ask Dave your question. So let's get started. Dave, welcome to Outdoors New South Wales and ACT webinar.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here, Laurie. I really appreciate the welcome and offer to present to everyone in such an important time where we do need to embrace the online digital marketing options that we have available to us. So it's a pleasure, and I've known Laurie for a number of years through the tourism sector. In fact, the picture on screen right now is thanks to an introduction Laurie made to me years ago for Port Stephens, Hunter Valley, and the Newcastle region. I almost forgot that, a very important region. And the three of them combined into a collaborative effort to market themselves, and they did that 3 years running, and it was a very successful program. But I thought I'd start by giving everybody a little bit of a background on Power Creative. So who are Power Creative? Who's Dave from Power Creative? My background is in the event industry. So I worked for around 8 years producing international scale events for, you know, the likes of the pharmaceutical world and the electronics world, people like Harvey Norman, Novartis Pharmaceuticals, where they would run their annual or biannual event, and they would need some sort of creative to go into that event. They would actually stitch it all together and make it seamless for the guests to enjoy during the program. So we, I guess, had a really strong focus on the creative, something that would always resonate for the viewers and something that would help that company market themselves better. Now that was, I guess, in many ways an internal communications, but there were occasionally times where we would have public versions of that. And the biggest public event I ever ran was the Sydney Christmas Parade, which ran through George Street in 2007. And it was an amazing experience. But the reason I tell you that is knowing that journey of where we've been and how we've come to Power Creative as a company that myself and my wife founded in 2011, is that we have had that experience of working with larger businesses and larger I suppose, focuses, and we do understand those needs. But at the core of it, we understand the individual need as well. So the person behind the business. We've also worked in the field of personal situations where families need help around the funeral market, for example, with their digital needs. And that continually comes up, especially this year, with people needing to do live streaming. But in the past, we wind back to 2011, it was families actually who just couldn't attend because of something that held them back, or maybe a child that didn't quite understand what was happening at the time, and they needed to capture that content or have some helping hand digitally that would help them create something special for that service. So we've always had that connection between, I suppose, the private and the commercial and the businesses, and that's why really Power Creative was born, to facilitate all of those needs rather than only just focusing on one of those markets. So this video here, there's a lot of videos within this presentation, by the way, to try and break up the Dave chat a little bit so that you can see some, I guess, other visuals around the subject matter that I'm talking about. So I'll just hit next on this, and I might just pull this volume down a little bit. But, these are our showreel moments. You can see some significant events that we've done in the past in terms of capture on film, and lots of different faces that you may recognize in this particular clip. I'll be talking a bit more about this Morello project a bit later on. And lots and lots of examples of different events that we've done over the years and different purposes for video content. Now, my wife and I were actually talking about updating that showreel recently, and we thought, you know what, it's not the right time to do it, because all of the footage that we're getting these days is so webinar focused that it's so rare actually to have tourist-based and outdoor-based video that we've actually kept it. Now, that showreel was actually around 2016. So it's still, I think, visually captivating, so we've kept it there. That's my opinion. I might be biased. But I thought I'd now throw to another Dave from earlier so I don't have to talk live and you guys can see about some tips. Now, one of the big things Laurie mentioned to me was that a big highlight for today's presentation is around the challenge of media consumption, and I guess today providing as many case studies as I can around the good and the bad of how video can or can't work. One example I'll share a bit later on around how things didn't work for one particular client. I'll share, I won't share who that was and who was responsible for it not working, but I will share the reasons as to why things didn't go as well as they could have. In the meantime, this is a little bit from me around some of the styles in 2020 that are keeping us busy at Power Creative. Hi, I'm Dave Power, founder and director at Power Creative, your professional video producers. Today, I'd like to share some of our recent projects and soon-to-be released projects that we've been working on. There's 5 key styles of videos that I'd like to share with you today. One of the video styles that we're commonly asked for is a mini-series or the business story type project. An example of this would be our recent work that we've done for our client, My Debt Relief. Now, in this environment, it's very important for that client to educate calmly and professionally a number of options and talking points for them to go through. We produced some content for this client, Rare Cancers Australia, as they produced a series focused on the patients and the carers involved in their support. Now, for both of these styles, you'll notice something unique about them is that the person speaking generally does not look at the lens the way that I am today talking to you. Usually, they're looking off to the side, telling somebody else about their story and giving you the insight about how they're feeling. The difference in style makes a huge impact on the viewer. Now, the next style is pre-recorded content, perhaps for use at a webinar or live event, or some sort of experience for the client in person. We're creating videos for those clients now that take away the need for those people to do in-person interactions, but also take the risk away from doing it live. The beauty of going pre-record is that these clients can know exactly the stats and facts and details, and then perhaps put it into a live environment so that they've got the ability to mix pre-record and live. Pre-recording is great if you can afford the time ahead to record the sessions. However, there is obviously situations where it does need to be recorded live and streamed live. We can certainly assist with that. But it's really about making sure the choice is accurate for the client rather than just jumping on into one style or one delivery of video content. Now, we've helped many clients in the situation of a funeral, for example, where they need to broadcast to a global audience and they would like that global audience to be there interacting live. We don't dictate any of these rules. We're very flexible. We work with the client and we make sure that we know, to the extent of their capability and their know-how, what is the right model for them. There's never one way, there's always many approaches. That's the beauty of working with an agile team like Power Creative. Now, the next two examples are the virtual space. It's really about having either a showroom or a pitch, or perhaps a combination of the two. These examples are perfect for the client that don't want masses of customers coming through their showroom doors and having to worry about COVID safe practice guidelines. They can have their customers do all of that research from home with perhaps even better clarity than what they would have got in person. It's a little bit like taking a Google Street View walk. We're able to stitch together a series of images as a 360 walkthrough and then pop out little windows of video. The videos all become part of the virtual tour. It obviously works in other situations beyond the product. If your product is a location and you don't want masses of people coming to that location, but maybe they're just doing a site visit, we can organize that as well. Finally, the virtual pitch. This is such an important document. And is it just a document? That's the question. And this is something that a lot of our clients are experiencing, where a document just doesn't do enough. A PowerPoint just doesn't do enough. They need to take their customers on a journey. They need to explain to their customers a lot more than just numbers, stats, facts. They need to present this information in a way that the customers are going to really walk away and want to work and sign that tender with that client. Now, this example is a client that has so many staff around the country. They wanted to feature the faces of all of these beautiful staff members doing amazing work for that business. And as a result, they've personalized a pitch that otherwise would have been stats and numbers has suddenly had some human injected into it. The difference with Power Creative is that we assess the needs of every project on a one-by-one basis. We work out what the strategy is for your project. We work out what the locations are for the recording, if the recording is necessary at all, including social distancing measures, if need be. We work out what style of filming will suit you. We work out what your budget is and the production line. And then we work out the timeline and the delivery. It's a really simplified approach, but it's all about communication. And that's where it starts for us. This is all about tailoring something for you, something that's going to take the headache out of that project for you, and something that you know will guarantee a result, whether it be a business, a corporate, a not-for-profit. An ideal referral for Power Creative is anybody that wants to take their communication to the next level and get that next pitch or get that next customer. Power Creative are your professional video producers, and we can help you navigate every step of the video production process. It's been great speaking with you today. If you do have any questions, please reach out. Dave.
And I'll skip that because I'm still here. Clearly, I'm not signing off. But that gives you a little bit of an overview of, I guess, more current trends based on 2020 of what's going on. And I thought that would be relevant to show you amongst some of the things that we've done for the outdoor and tourism things, because there's a way you can integrate them. And I think one of the key things is from that video there, talking about who your audience is, understanding what the need is of creating the video, and then working backwards from there. Because if you don't know that to begin with, potentially you're creating video for no real need. So that's one of the first things that we'll ask a lot of clients, and I'll bring up a list in a moment that will actually have the typical type of questions that we do ask when we're briefing in on a video project. And that will be something I think, Laurie, maybe we could make available to people as something that we mail off later on, so that, people can establish what their own brief is for themselves to think about.
Great idea. Yep, sounds good.
Yeah. So is there any questions so far, Laurie, or am I going too fast, or do you want me to?
No, all good. No questions at the moment, but just a reminder to everyone, but feel free to put them into the Q&A. So if you do have anything that's come to mind, I'm just looking at that video then and not myself, just, thinking, of course, looking off screen, it's certainly a very different look. And what am I trying to achieve from it's a really great snapshot that I saw there. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. Yeah, and I think, there's some authenticity that can be felt by the viewers when they look at something where if you're looking at the eyeballs of the person right face to face, like I am right now, compared to looking off screen, especially testimonial videos. If you're talking about, getting a testimonial of a customer that's used your service, looking down the barrel isn't necessarily the best idea. It can be a bit confronting, not only for the viewer, but particularly for the person giving that testimonial. It's much easier for them to look off to an interviewer and have a conversation with a person than what it is to be looking at a lens. And I think that actually is one of the biggest challenges in 2020 with the virtual environment, because everyone is staring at a lens and it's a little bit unnatural. So from a marketing perspective, if you can take that unnatural feeling and give them something more natural to do in the direction of that testimonial, even if you are still gathering those testimonials remotely, just give them some direction around how they're looking on camera or where they're looking on camera. And, you don't want them reading testimonials either. Bullet points are a huge benefit for testimonials. Talk to 2 or 3 points. Don't talk verbatim. Don't script up something that's word for word, because it doesn't come across authentic. And these are some of the things, that we're constantly looking at. And so beyond, myself in the team, or my wife and myself in the team at Power Creative, we're always engaging other experts like a journalist, an interviewer, someone that can actually narrate or help interview is super important, because that's the part there of the human interaction, and if you don't have someone that's across the message, and that may be someone internally in your team that's across the message, but if their focus is split between the technical of filming as well as the operation of interviewing, there's often something that will be missed during that process. So we always educate clients about this, and let them know the risks involved. And sometimes it is a budget decision, and they say, look, we've only got one person who can do everything, being the filming and the interviewing, or we've only got budget to afford for that, so therefore we'll take the risk. But just be aware of it. I think is really worth noting, or even piloting an idea before you go and spend a bigger budget on the rest of the project. Now, here's a little bit of background for you. Back before we got into Power Creative, at that point where I was still finishing the event production role and about to launch Power Creative, we took a bit of hiatus to go and travel and have a bit of a time for ourselves, my wife and I. But of course, we came back into work because we were filming our trip on every moment, being excited travelers. Now, what happened at this particular guest house in Barcelona was that the owner didn't have a website, didn't have any marketing, and was really struggling with bookings. He had a beautiful guest house, but they just weren't leveraging what they have around them. Now, when they saw that we were filming a lot of our trip, they realized, when we got discussing about how we do this sort of content as a business, that there was an opportunity to extend our stay. Basically, we got to stay in Barcelona for an extra week or two, and in exchange for the services. So we always look back at this as one of those real, I don't want to use the word pivotal, but I've used it, it's out there now. It's one of those real game-changing moments for us, where we've realized the power of exactly what we're doing here, and what it can do for business, and particularly not so much at the time in Barcelona, but particularly coming home and then going, oh, look at the results they're getting. That's pretty amazing, So not having a website, but just having this video, which I'll show for you now on YouTube. I'll tell you how they went after this. Now, I won't play the whole thing because I think you get the idea. You know, this is pretty basic footage. At the time, we didn't have any, you know, gimbals. We didn't have sliders. We didn't have all the equipment that we use in today's productions. Hence, you can see some camera wobble in this. But, you know, what this video did for them was just so much in telling a story around what the experience is like, you know, and because we literally combined our own home video footage of us experiencing the destination. You know, this was really a huge point for the guest house because they weren't selling a real estate video just with their room and the way the room looks, but they're actually selling an experience. And that was something that we learnt after doing this. It's the experience of what that client has, or what that does to the person who's attending that we're actually promoting. That's the key thing. And I see, Laurie, you mentioned you've got a question there.
Yes, I do. It's around testimonials. Do you have any tips for filming testimonials of teenagers who struggle giving a natural testimonial of bullet points?
Well, and I think that's where, you know, if you can be there with them, forget the bullet points altogether. I think really it's about prompting them with something that makes them respond in a way that does feel natural. And this is all where paraphrasing comes in. And from a journalist point of view or a media trainer that we've engaged in our work, I've learnt this from them as well. You always need to ask them to respond with part of the question in their answer so that it's not reading a bullet point, it's not reading a note, but really it's, you know, let's say the question is, how have you enjoyed your experience today? But you probably need to think of even more narrowed in questions than that. This is just off the cuff. They need to be starting their response with today's experience has been X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? So they need to integrate part of the question into their response, which just makes it feel a lot more natural for them to respond. If they don't have that, you know, it really does make it difficult for them to respond. And not only does it make it difficult for them to respond, I think it makes it difficult for the audience who are listening or watching the video to really grasp what they're even referring to. So if someone says yes and this, what's the yes and? What's that referring to? So you've really got to get that. Hopefully that answers your question. A bit of paraphrasing is the key, I think, and less heavy structure.
If you have any further questions on that, please just throw it into the Q&A, whoever that was. It was an anonymous one, so I can't even point to them.
Thank you, Anonymous. I appreciate it. And I mean, you know, the story of Barcelona, I don't want to harp on too much about it, but it is one of those moments that really stood out for Erin and I to realize the power of what this video thing can actually do. And this was in an age where I really don't think video was anywhere near what it is today. You know, social media platforms weren't using it. It was either YouTube or maybe Vimeo at the time, but that was it. It wasn't really integrated into Facebook or Instagram or anything. You know, you look at the power of LinkedIn and all of these other mediums now, we're starting to make videos that are specific to each platform. So there might be something that's been cut in a way that fits the proportion of Instagram in that square style or the vertical style, versus the widescreen
traditional video style. So there's so many considerations, and I think this comes back to knowing again, who is your audience, where are they, what are they watching this on, and how many versions do I need? You know, should we be creating those 3 alternative looks? In fact, what I might do, Laurie, here is I'll jump out of this presentation that I'm sharing on Keynote. I'm just going to show you guys another thing here on the website. This is something that we did recently for a client, where this exact point that I'm making about a square versus a rectangle and a vertical, you know, your traditional ones down here in widescreen. But we thought, look, it's probably best, and I'll just scroll this one forward a little bit so you can see the difference in framing of this particular presenter. But, you know, this area here isn't necessary for someone on a mobile. In fact, this area left and right of the person speaking is a waste of space. If you're on a mobile looking at all this, you're not engaged with that person's eyes. The minute you zoom in to this sort of shot here, you can see a lot more of that person presenting, and you really are taking it in. And that's the benefit of doing the variation in the layout of the actual frame. And there's a lot of these templates now that come actually built into the editing software. So for example, I cut on Final Cut Pro. Final Cut Pro now has a lot of these templates set. You know, you can customize the templates and make them any size you want, but it's fairly intuitive, you know. And if you are an Apple user, iMovie is great as well. Unfortunately, if you're a PC user, I can't really tell you much because I don't use PC, but have a bit of a Google review about what programs are doing the best for your edit. But, you know, I guess it depends also on whether or not you're shooting something to cut, or if you're going to sort of do it all inside of your phone and shoot it that way, and using the social media tool to cut it. There's a whole lot of different ways you can approach that. But yeah, I was going to originally put that one inside of the presentation, but I thought I'd come out and actually show you that live on the website because there's some value in it. So the Barcelona thing, where that ended up for us was we had another project where we were engaged to come over to London and film for a choir. And there was this amazing opportunity where we got to follow an Australian choir from St. James Church, King Street, Sydney, doing a performance in London. And that was just an amazing opportunity. But while we're over there, we got in contact with our old buddies in Barcelona, thinking, well, they're only across the way there. Why don't we just travel over and bump into them? Now, they were so keen to engage with us again that they actually got us to create this little tour video, which we traveled around sightseeing with them. Now, this time we had a little bit more gear with us because we had been engaged on the other projects. So the difference in quality that you'll notice from the last one is there's some stability in these shots, and we're not bumping around the place on trains and buses. We're actually, being driven around by a chauffeur in a Mercedes and capturing this particular thing. So I think it's important also, there's a note there around production value. Keep in mind your audience won't stick around if the quality's crap, basically. So be very careful about how you're shooting this thing. If you're doing it yourself, have a bit of a think, or even, go to your camera store and talk to some professionals around what equipment you really need. Or of course you can talk to your local producer and see what they can produce for you professionally. And then, talk about budget. A project like this, for instance, a half-day shoot and a half-day edit for us, we usually quote between the $2,000 to $3,000 mark, and what someone can get out of that is pretty huge. If you look at the return on the investment and what they get from the video, it's pretty huge. Now, the cost of that compared to buying your own equipment and trying to get it up to a professional standard and then learning it, you need to weigh that up as well. How much is this distracting you from your business? For example, I would never do my own books. I'm always going to get the bookkeeper to do it because I tried once and failed. So that's just something to note. Now, I'm not going to show this whole video. I'll just show you this much for now.
but you know, that hopefully just gives you a bit of an idea about the quality, you know, that needs to come out of these things. And likewise for the Famil tour that I mentioned earlier, this is the Port Stephens project here, and I'll turn that down a little. Basically, the idea was to capture people doing a Famil, checking out these venues and considering the location so that they could plan their next conferences. Now, in the current climate, what's happening here is that these Famil tours are becoming virtual. We're also talking to Newcastle at the moment about producing some content that, you know, maybe we are combining some old footage from shots like this, but the thing is, it's got to be relevant to today's market. So, you know, showing footage of people hugging and jumping around isn't really relevant to today's market. So it's also about using what's relevant now. And in this case, I would probably pick more the location shots for this client and then integrate some new footage that does show socially distanced opportunities, because it will detract from their brand. So that's another thing to be very careful of, you know, when this footage has been shot, is it still relevant today? And thanks for all those little chat take homes, Laurie. That's great that you're doing that.
No worries.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And yeah, the virtual tour thing, I think I alluded to the virtual tour in my 5-minute chat back there when I was talking about 5 styles. You know, the whole Google, the Google walkthrough style is huge. And there's a whole lot of ways you can host it, you know. But the key for that project was I worked alongside a photographer, and the photographer did the 360 component of the tour, and then we did the video part of it, and we integrated the two together. And it, you know, that project was probably around a 10K exercise for the client, but the amount of products he has on display now, 75 products. You know, and we're talking pretty high-end luxury products for blinds installation, you know, so it's very important for them with the type of clients that they have to be able to showcase in the detail a tour that actually shows them, you know, a lot about the product. So that's something to be careful and think very carefully about before you go creating content. And this is that brief sample that I mentioned earlier, where you know, you really need to identify all of these areas and just sort of work out what is relevant to your audience. You know, what are the key messages that you want people to take away? Is this one video or is it many videos? Do you need a new video per message? Do you need a new video per subject that you're referring to? Another thing that I didn't mention earlier that's really important is the voiceover. You know, we talked about the testimonial, but what about the voiceover? Do you even need to see the person speaking? Can you have someone narrate the message that you want them to take away in the video and actually have that as a guideline track, you know? So that's something to consider. Or you can combine all the styles. You can have voiceover, you can have a talking head being the interview, you can have a presenter talking to camera. You can combine all of those things if you really want to. But again, it probably comes back to who is the audience, how are they going to best take in this information, and who do they need to hear from? You know, for example, if it's someone that needs to see a testimonial to back up the fact that they like this product or they like this service, then, you know, that's where you want to be thinking about what style of video it is. And the other thought I just had was about captions. Now, this is really important on a video in social media, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, not so much Instagram, because Instagram doesn't allow caption pop-ups. But the caption pop-up is basically something where you could be in Facebook or LinkedIn and have your phone volume switched off, but you can still see the captions coming up. The minute you turn your volume up, the captions disappear. Now, I personally really like that because visually speaking, the video has been created to take in the frame of the entire picture. And especially if we're talking about outdoor product, you really don't want to detract from the product by having a burnt in caption, a caption that's permanently there, in my opinion. Now, the burnt-in caption is something that you would use on, say, Instagram, because Instagram doesn't allow the pop-up feature of a caption. That's only for Facebook and LinkedIn. So there's lots of these considerations that you want to be thinking about as well. And of course, you may have heard of a website called rev.com. And rev.com is a great place to go and get your captions created, so that you don't have to spend hours upon hours painstakingly typing in every word that was spoken in that video. Now, I resisted Rev for a while, and I was really particular about me typing the captions. But I tell you what, once you've done it, you just look at Rev and go, well, that was a waste of time. Why was I doing that? The only time it might be beneficial for you to personally type in your captions is if you just want to resize or change the amount of words that you've got on each screen when the captions come up. So there's a few things to think about there. I don't want to overwhelm you on that too much, but I'd say just note it and have a think about it. Now, the special requirements I've mentioned in this brief here around what visual assets do you have to incorporate. So, you know, there's the piece that we're talking about filming, but do you even need to film? Do you have existing photos? Do you have existing videos that you could incorporate into an edit? And that could be something that you know may just make your video a lot easier to create as well. So they're all parts of the brief that I'd be thinking about. The distribution, I think I've alluded to that with the social media platforms, but you know, if you are talking about a higher engagement or I guess a higher budget, you know, it's also about paid advertising such as TV or other forms of online advertising on your pre-roll ads.
Yeah. I've got a question here. What are the best platforms to be on these days in distribution? Because the comment here is there's so many to choose from.
So I think, again, that comes back to targeting your audience. You know, what is what's your audience doing? What's their behavior? And maybe actually getting some research on that before you choose the platform would be the best. And to be honest, I'd be talking out of school if I said which one is the best, because I would engage on that level as well and ask those questions of the client. And I don't think there is one right answer on it, to be honest. For example, Macquarie Media, we've done some work for them when they launched their new radio station, Macquarie Sports. Now, they paid a lot of money for their ads to go into the footy finals and have them, you know, aired on that network. How successful it was, I'm not too sure. You know, unfortunately, my role is to create the content and then leave the client to decide on distribution. And in that case, I don't really know how well they performed, but it is, I think, relevant for a sports radio channel to advertise during footy finals. So I'm sure they would have done well out of it. But it's about knowing their audience is going to be there and appreciate that the message is being seen. So in that sense, I'd be talking to an advertising agency or someone that can help you as a media buyer, and then ask them those questions, but don't sign anything. Just make sure you do a lot of research, because it can be very costly. And you don't want to be spending too much on your advertising, in my opinion, especially when you can create content and share it relatively free on a lot of platforms. So just, put it all into a plan, I think, before you go and sign anything. Budget, again, that's to that point, you know. What I ask, I usually send case studies to my clients around, you know, here's some case studies of what we did for this client, the example of the $3,000, the $10,000, etc. Which of these case studies work best for your price range? So that's just me, I guess, as a business, understanding what budget my client has. But for you as the business creating the content, I think it's important that you evaluate, you know, where this spend is going and what you really need to spend it on. And knowing all the other aspects that we've talked about, with you know, where it's being filmed, how many days it's being filmed, is there a voiceover? do we need a professional media trainer or an interviewer? They're all the sorts of things that make up the budget that I'm referring to. Or if, again, you're DIYing and you're not necessarily outsourcing on those things, it's how much time do you want to invest in this? And I guess you could call that a budget as well. Existing video references. So this is where you're researching now what your customers are doing, what your competitors are doing in the market. And for me, I need to know this as a video producer, because if somebody's creating some content and they want to reach a certain, look and feel, but if they're just shooting from the hip and not really thinking about what the others are doing in the market, it can be a little bit hit and miss. So it's really good to know if there's any motivation behind the concept that somebody has to create the video. Now, they may not always know that. So that's where we might say, well, we've noticed, as a research point, we might actually say we've noticed that these people are doing something like this in the market. Does that suit the idea that you're thinking about? And I think between myself as a video producer and the client, we're always sort of looking at that together collectively so that we match the style, and that brings it all back into, the rest of the project planning. And deadline's crucial. When do you need the video by? And, what's driving you to create the video? Do you have a virtual expo coming up? Do you have some sort of, event that you need to have this video by? Or is there a launch of the product? Do you have a day that you're launching this? We're always driven by this. As a producer, I'm always looking at the deadline for the client. One massive deadline right now that we're working on is with the National Oncology Alliance, driven by Rare Cancers Australia. And this is a massive project because they're doing an online summit, the CAN Forum, in November. And we need to create a lot of content ahead of that for them to play back. And it's just crucial for us to know what those deadlines are. And if nobody shares those deadlines, then unfortunately things will inevitably go wrong, because we just need to know. And sometimes people do a white lie around deadlines. It's not always a good idea, because if you're very transparent about what your deadlines are, you might find that your product ends up even better than what you had originally planned. So that would be another point to note around planning it all. Is there any questions around the brief that I haven't covered that you're thinking about, Laurie, or anyone on the call?
No one's put any questions up there. A bit of chat backwards and forwards privately on stuff going, yep. That's great. So it's all resonating, which is magnificent.
Yeah.
I suppose one for me, Dave, and I obviously, depending on the businesses on the line, I'm just having a look. We've got everything from quite small businesses through to some of the larger businesses. And I probably can answer this one myself, but I really love your opinion on what should people budget to have something that represents their business. Does it scale on size, or what is your perspective on that?
I think the 3 to 10K mark is probably a good point to start from. From my point of view, that's what I would be budgeting. I suppose it depends who you're working with, like if you can find, I guess, someone that's not as established in the industry, they might perhaps be looking at less than 5, a 1 to 5K budget. But generally speaking, if you're looking at that 3 to 10K budget, it's probably a good starting point. Now, what do you get out of that? You could get several videos. It may not be just one video, especially if you're shooting several subject matters in one day or a half day. That example of the person that I was showing there in square and wide format, in a half a day, we ended up shooting 5 different subject matters. So you could divide her budget by 5, and that's another good way to look at this. Try not to think one video at a time when you're budgeting, because if you do, it could get pretty costly. If you can knock off as many subjects as you can at a time, and many videos at a time as you can, you'll end up with a way better budget to afford the next project. So try and think forwards around what the subject matter is.
Great. And the lifeline that would have for a business, how long would that use them for?
So I think, again, I think that the subject matter would be determining that point, because if you're talking about something that is potentially something that will date, you know, it's seasonal based, or let's take finance, for example. If you're talking about this week or this month's finance, it's not going to be relevant next month. So I think it's just about what the subject matter is that will determine how long that will last. An example of that last one with the 4 or 5 videos she's a coach. She's more of a mindset coach for people in business. Now, her videos would last years. You know, she could get 2 to 3 years, maybe even more out of it, because she's not going into very specific detail that's going to date. She's actually talking about her ability and how she can assist people. And I think that's important to note. You know, whereas if we're talking about a deal that's only going to last for the next month, then that's only going to have that shelf life.
Great, thanks, Dave. And just one other question from a participant. Have you used interactive videos like Don't Take the Knife or You versus Wild? If so, what software would you recommend?
I haven't experienced that. No. Tell me more. How does that work?
Let me ask Ian. Ian, I've just given you permission to talk. Would you like to talk to that?
Yeah, I can talk to that. So there's some interactive videos where it doesn't work on television, but if you're using a smartphone or a computer, you're able to play the video, and then the person talking in the video basically says, okay, you choose. And then at that point, sort of 2 icons or options pop up on the screen, and you can click them with your mouth, and it sends you off into another video based on the choice you've made, and shows you different content based on what you clicked on. So I guess the best example I've seen is when my son is watching Bear Grylls on Netflix, and Bear Grylls has made one called You versus Wild, and it's called video branching, but it causes the watcher to engage with the video content and make a decision about what track. It's like Choose Your Own Adventure stories, but with video.
I did actually, now that you've put in that context, I did see that there was a Netflix one. I can't remember which one it was now, but yeah, I have seen it. Now, I did meet someone recently who has been creating this sort of content, especially for the educational side of things when it comes to doing, say, a WHS induction. And it's about, you know, how would you react in this particular situation and what would you do next? So it's a really good question. Now, unfortunately, I haven't produced any content around that, so I can't tell you what software is best. But I can certainly follow up after this with some ideas when I talk to the people that I know who have done that software. You know, it sounds to me like it's a whole lot of embedded links somehow, and it's probably more about the software that you're using is creating each clip, and then that clip would go somewhere, you know, whether it be a hosted site or whatever that is. It sounds like it's just a whole lot of interactive links, but I'd be talking out of school if I told you exactly what they're using, because haven't had to produce it, but I'd love to. It'd be very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. Send me your email address and we'll make sure we get back to you with that response.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So the other video I've got up next that I thought I'd just share a little snippet from a trip we did in Borneo, Mount Kinabalu. We were approached by a fitness group called $1 Million Fitness, who have since rebranded to Core Fitness. And they basically said, look, we're taking this person on a bit of a personal game-changing mission. He was very overweight, and so they said, look, going to the gym isn't going to be enough. They need to basically break him on this mountain. And what they got us to do was actually pre-produce a lot of content around family members and business colleagues who, you know, were all in support of the subject of Andrew Morello. Now, some of you may know Andrew Morello from The Apprentice, and he was, you know, he's Mark Burrister's right-hand man in Yellow Brick Road.
but he was the winner of The Apprentice back in the day. That's his claim to fame. The video does exist on our website as well, which I'll post a link for later. But for now, what I've done is I've just captured this little moment, which shows you, I guess, the power of the video, not only for this personal journey that he's on and the reaction that he has, but I think for the fitness company here, particularly, they got huge exposure out of this. They ended up getting picked up by networks 7 and 9, I think, as a journey, because Morello is such a significant name already for, as a keynote speaker and as a presenter and a, entrepreneur. All of the networks were just keen to jump on this journey that he went on. So that's something else to keep in mind as a business in the outdoors. I would be very mindful of the influencers around you. Who can you get to help you market your business? And sometimes not necessarily by choice. I don't know if Andrew Morello had this choice. No, he would have signed something. But I didn't get involved in that. I just shot and produced this. But here's a little clip.
And once we got towards the summit, at a very dark moment as well, 2 o'clock in the morning, we actually showed Andrew a video of his best mate Stuart with some motivational lines in there.
And Jason goes to me, Morello, can you sit on that rock? And I'm looking at that rock thinking it's very uncomfortable, and they were going to set up the cameras so we could have a bit of a chat and watch another video to give me the inspiration and motivation to keep going. And I said to Jason, no, I don't want to sit on that rock, I want to sit on a more comfortable rock. And he's like, no, I'm going to sit on this rock. And then he, all of a sudden, this military man tells you to sit on the rock, you bloody listen and you sit on the rock.
We've shared so many amazing memories, and we're going to share so many more. You're one of my best men at my wedding, and so we want to make sure that you've got the best fitting suit of your life, that you've really taken control of it. I want to have to make you 3 tailor-made suits in the next 5-6 months because you've lost that much weight, because you're just killing your goals. Probably kill my back pocket, even along the way, but that's something that would only make me incredibly happy, because sometimes all you need to do is look up and there's a little bit of support and inspiration right in front of your eyes. Sometimes all you need to do is look up and a little bit of inspiration.
Oh, fuck off! And this guy yells at me behind me, and I'm thinking, who's this smart ass yelling at, trying to copy the video? And I turn around and there's Stuart Cook. He had literally climbed the mountain. Right now, as he's hugging me, I'm feeling like I can accomplish anything, and knowing that you've got one of your best mates by your side, and knowing all the trouble that he and the guys, Craig and Jason, had gone to, was a very touching thing to know that was all for me.
So that it just goes to show you the power of that moment. I think in that video, I chose that because it's a real high point of the video. There's around 8 minutes of the full clip that if you want to check it out on the website, it's there with a whole lot of lead up to how he got to that point. But I think that for me was a real standout moment in that clip that just, it really resonates as to why these videos are so important in this environment, because people who are climbing a mountain are usually, on some journey, right? They're not just doing it for the sake of it. Sometimes they are, but in this particular example, I think it really stood out. And a little technical fact here, I actually slipped at the top and broke a monitor, which wasn't fun at all. But thankfully I didn't lose the footage, which was the main thing. So that's the Mount Kinabalu journey, which was just amazing. Really, really happy to say that was part of our growth as well in terms of experiencing these videos. Now, the next video I really want to show you is all about someone who has heavily engaged their social media presence with the use of video. And then this example is a group called Weight Loss Coaching Works. It sounds like I profile this industry, but I don't. Apparently they follow me. So I've gone from Mount Kinabalu to Newcastle again here. But this is Ben Physick, who founded Weight Loss Coaching Works, motivating people to do something about their weight, basically. The power of this video, though, and what it's done for their growth is just huge. Now, the night that they shared this video, I think they had
it's not so much just about the views. They had hundreds of shares, which means once you publish your video, not only do people click play on that video, but then others will like and share that video. And then because of the like and share of that video, it amplifies and it just goes bananas. So I think they had like 45,000 views, within 48 hours. It just went silly. But here's a quick look, combining testimonials and, pretty cool shots of the ocean.
I think the most impactful thing for me is seeing the amount of lives change.
4 weeks into the program, I've lost 5.5 kilos.
We've got the chance to take it, and this has been the best opportunity for me.
Just that certainty that this is for me, this is what I want. It's given me vision.
The atmosphere, the energy, the people, the love, but most of all, the connection.
Don't look at things through the filter of the past. Use this as a launching pad for the future.
Everyone cares.
Excitement, the motivation, the change when you're with a big team, and we wanted to do that.
Getting in here is what's helped get my life back.
Very empowering, and we're blessed to be here. So awesome to have everyone recognised.
Share the love with everyone and get my love cup filled back up again to take home. And putting your kids in, supporting your children, and I guess that's what we're all here for in some way.
So I won't play it all because it is a bit long, and I know we're getting close to the end of the session here, guys, but you can just see that the power of testimonials is massive, and that's pretty much the basis of these videos. It's people talking about how good the program is. Now, what does that do for this particular group? It just amplifies everything about them, and they've got significant coaches who are renowned around the country and the world, in fact, who have, come and spoken here on the table. As you can see, they're pretty out there group. They're really quite a lot of fun. But they knew, getting a big group together like this would just be massive. And so they capitalized the opportunity with video. They engaged us. And as you can see, they've created a massive logo here on the beach with the people as a human logo. So just really, really cool use of the content. And they've done it not only on this occasion, but other occasions in more local areas like the Bella Vista location here. Which
That's made us...
Turn that down, sorry. They also did very similar here with testimonials in more of a suburban environment. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something like a headland at a lighthouse in Newcastle. It could be in the local area. I guess it depends on what the motivation is of the group. And in this case, it's just about being there for each other and supporting each other. So that's the key focus of creating the content. And that's, I guess, a little bit about the work that we do at Power Creative. And that's me. Is there any more questions you can think about, Laurie, or anyone on the call?
That's brilliant. My hands are tired from copious amounts of notes, but thank you so much. Guys, is there any questions anyone wants to raise their hand and ask in the 60 seconds we have left on this session? Or if you want to type it in, you're more than welcome. And if you can't think of any now, but think of them after, you all have my email address, I hope, which is ceo@outdoorsnsw.org.au. And you can certainly type them to me. I'll correspond with Dave and get back to you. But I think everyone is either overwhelmed or asleep, Dave, so I'm not too sure which one. Thank you again so much for your time today and your insight. Video is certainly king from my experience as a marketer, and I can't stress enough the more you do in video. And so let me turn on my video. Speaking of which, it's certainly something that really speaks volumes as far as in touching your audience and understanding. So thank you so much again, Dave, for your time today, and thank you everyone for joining us. For those that couldn't make it, you can see it online, which I'll be sending to the team very soon. So everyone have a fabulous week. Thank you, and we'll see you. Our next one is on the 22nd of October, and that is around some of the tools that you need as a business to make informed choices. And you'll be surprised at how many tools there are there that you may not know exist. So join us for that session, same time, 9 a.m. on the 22nd. And for the, I noticed there's a Queenslander on board, that'll be your 8 a.m. So make sure you jump on the 22nd. And the last one is on the 30th, which I'm still really excited to say that we've got Dan Cockerell, who's the ex-Vice President of Magic Kingdom, who's delivering that session on leadership. So, and that's Magic Kingdom in America, so just clarifying. And we'll talk to you all soon. Have a great week, and talk to you then. Bye.